Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go through a Messiah comprehensive guide. This deck just came out in the most recent Stride deck set, worthy of, I guess, a comprehensive guide, just like Chronojet. So we're going to go through the whole deck, pretty much what to change from essentially when you get it out of the package, a few cards to pick up, and essentially get it ready for, you know, the competitive scene. If you guys need any coaching for the BCS season is coming up very, very soon. Hit me up on my Metafy. My link is in the bottom right hand corner, also in the description. Feel free to book a session and we can get started on your season. So the Messiah Stride deck set, it's pretty interesting. Definitely a different take on, I guess, how like the Stride deck sets kind of evolve. Kind of warps around, you know, how Messiah used to play. Obviously not as oppressive as it was before because the lock mechanic slightly changed in this matter because of the crest. So just looking at the deck list here. So this is my own deck list that I've been playing around with. So if you guys want to use it, it is 6MUL. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck log code. Feel free to search it up on the English deck log and you'll be able to find it. So with my ride lines, I run the Messiah ride line, obviously. So yeah, you kind of have to play this ride line. That there's no ifs or buts about it. Usually when you ride the Awakening Messiah, stride so that you call it out. You usually call it out in the back row of one of your other rear guards, and then stick one of your other rear guards that self-locks in front of it. So I'm playing 3 of the Alter Ego Messiah. This deck actually doesn't need to go into Exilix very much. This deck stabilizes quite well on Amnesty, and you know, Exilix is a nice to have, just like Next Stage, but I think Next Stage is a lot more impactful just because, you know, you're riding down into a Guard Restrict grade 3, whereas Exilix is converting a 4 attack deck into a 5 attack deck. So I guess it's like slight alterations, but like as the game goes on, the more face-up G-Zone units that you have, then the stronger your deck becomes. So that's that, and then I'm running 4 of the Astrolabe Dragon or Astrolabe Dragon. This card is actually pretty nuts. So in comparison to its counterpart in the Chronojet deck, this deck runs 4. You can actually drop it down to 3 because as the game scales, the power doesn't really matter too much. Just because, you know, it scales by 10k, 20k, 30k, depending on how many amnesties you go through. But this by itself, without any power boost, is a 23k attacker. And then pretty much when you discard it for Stride, you draw 1. The reason why we're playing 4 is because you want to use it as a discard fodder for your Stride so that you don't lose the Stride cost, or lose for the Stride cost. But also, you also want to commit this, right? Especially if you're, you know, using 4 of the Kaluzar Claim, which is the grade 2 when at the end of battle it attacks, retire itself top 3, call 1 as a lock card. If you find the Astrolabe Dragon, you call it as locked, right? So then when it unlocks using Amnesty's skill, it becomes a 23k attacker, and then obviously with every other power boost that it gets from, you know, boosting or, you know, face up G-Zone or whatever. So it's good because you can find it, right? And you know, if you ever find Arrest the Messiah as well, that's also good. But generally, like when you find Astrolabe Dragon off your Kaluzar, is like really, really good because you're already attacking pretty big, and then the second round of attacks after your Vanguard attacks, you pretty much get a 10k buff on, you know, a rear guard that used to be there, essentially, if you think about it in pseudo terms. So yeah, this though, you know, if you find it a bit clunky, you can kind of take one out, put it in another slot or whatever, but we'll talk a little bit about that later on in this video. So next, for Arrest the Messiah, probably one of the most important cards in your deck. Pretty much it is similar to Lady Fencer in V, where after it attacks with a Messiah Vanguard, it gains 5k and lock itself. So similar to Upstream, it's a 15k attacker by itself. Generally, you want to put this in front of of your Awakening Messiah, because the unit in front, when it unlocks, it gains +10. So, you know, because this card already gets, you know, a 15k buff or 5k buff plus whatever G-Zone is face up. Giving an extra 10 to this is actually really good. Hitting over defensives is really nice. So yeah, that's Arrest the Messiah, probably one of the most important cards because it self-locks. So you don't actually lose this unit, so it keeps it on the field. Whereas Kaluzar, it, you know, removes itself to try to, I guess, gacha for the, you know, the new unit that appears in the circle. And also, if it stays there, that means that you can use it for intercept as well. Now, the next card. Now, a lot of people kind of like, why is this card being used? And it is for field control. Now, if you think about it, right? If you play this, you CB1 and you retire one of your opponent's front row, that means then you start locking their back row and retire that as well. So this deck is capable of being able to full field retire, similar to Candiva, where, you know, you just select the whole field and then pretty much it just goes bye-bye, right? Which is why this B hero is being used. Soul free, because you start to kill the intercepts first, and CB in this deck doesn't even matter because you play Sacrifice Messiah, which gives you essentially unlimited counter charge. So you just use a bunch of CB and then self-lock Sacrifice Messiah or unlock or whatever, and then counter charge. So pretty much all your retires are free. So you kill the 2 in the front row, and then you start targeting your opponent's back row because you lock using Alter Ego or whatever. And then you pretty much start nuking their field, which means that your opponent is forced to play more cards from their hand onto their field, which means that you're actually taking out a lot more cards from their hand as the turns go by. So yeah, we played two or 3 soul free. This number can fluctuate depending on how many Mekanis you want to run, how many Astrolabe you want to run, and however many Alter Ego you want to run as well. So the number kind of fluxes, but I think 3 is nice. 3 is good because you can see it, but not so much that, you know, it clogs, which is good. So then we play 3 of the DPG, and then obviously 1 Elementaria, just there, and then 3 Destiny Dealer. Now, if you want to run 4 so that you can find your Alter Egos and you have access to your strides, then go ahead. But I think that there's more value in running Astrolabe and less Alter Ego, just because, you know, Astrolabe is a really good attacker, and, you know, you rather sacrifice 1 of the slots for like something better, like a soul free, just because, you know, you have better utility units instead of, you know, you're just ditching this for stride. And usually when you ditch for stride, you ditch using Astrolabe so that you get the draw 1 back. So the value of this card is actually really low. And I know that in the Chronojet deck, Mark 1, he actually took out all of the Steam Breaths just because it is such a low value card, and this deck just speaks for itself. So yeah, we play 3 Destiny Dealer, good to have. Try to find your Alter Ego, deck compressors, and, you know, if you ever find all your Alter Egos out, then, you know, you can start fishing it from the drop so that you can go to XLX. Now, the next, probably one of the most, or the most important card is Sacrifice Messiah. So at the end of battle that this unit boosted, if your Vanguard is Messiah, lock this unit, choose one of your Vanguards, gains 5k, and then if you don't have any face-up damage, countercharge 1. And it's not once per turn. So essentially what you can do is, after it boosts this, you just spam this, right? And then you countercharge 1, which means that you fulfill the counter blast cost for your Amnesty. I completely forgot to add the G-Zone, but we just know that it's 4 Amnesty and 4 Excellix, so we'll just assume that it's there. I'll probably edit this deck log and probably post the real deck log code in the description below, but yeah, ignore me. And then 2 Mikani. Now, this card actually is a bit 50-50. A lot of people have actually cut this to 3, even 2, just because the Soul Charge 1 is nice. Sure, you know, you get the Soul Charge 1, means that you can draw more towards the mid game, but, you know, if you start to prioritize some of your cards, right, what you want to use to Soul Blast, what you want to do this, what you want to do that, then the Soul Charge actually doesn't come up very much. Now, if you find that you need more Soul Charge, then you can up the number of Mekanis and then maybe like take out the Astrolabe, maybe the Soul Free, or even decrement the number of Destiny Dealers as well, so that you can jump it up to 3. But I find that a lot of the time when I'm playing with Mikani, I just ditch it and I never play it on rearguard. And usually a neg 1 so that you can get an extra soul charge, it just feels really, really bad. But then when we talk about the triggers, I do play the Intersoul crit. I find the value in this is way better, just because you can pop an Astrolabe with like an 8k at the back and then pumping that to like 33, 43, and I think that replacing the Intersoul for Mikani is way better because you're essentially negging 1 to bump up a tier by 5, which plays much better into how you position your units, and it's just way more value than you negging 1. But I guess the downside is that in this case you're negging 1 of a 5k in comparison to a 15k. So that's kind of where it differs, but to be honest, like if you're negging 1 just to Soul Blast 1 and draw a card, then that card's going to be refunded anyways. So the heals, I split the 2-2 heals into crit heals. I think crit heals in this meta is really, really good. You're playing against Messiah, so mirrors, you're playing Gandiva, you're playing Eva, you're playing your Jewel, and we know that Empusa is coming out as a shop challenge promo, so you see a spike in that. Zorga Mask as well. A lot of these decks have crit, so I think playing crit heals in this metagame is actually really, really good. So we're playing that, and then 4-4 of each of the crits, so 4 of the effect crits. As I explained before, it just bumps tiers, gives you soul as well, and then we're playing draws. You can swap draws to front if you feel that this deck draws enough, but I think compensating playing draws instead of more Mikani is, I guess, a good trade-off. So if you're playing more Mikani and then playing fronts, then that trade-off works well as well. And then 1 OT because OT is broken, and I completely forgot the G-Zone. There's 4 Amnesty and 4 Exilix in this deck. So we're not going to look through too much on how to position the units, but essentially the cards to mull for would be Arrest the Messiah and Sacrifice. These two are really, really important, and you really want to see an Astrolabe so that you can discard it and draw 1 on stride, but otherwise pretty much everything else is just as it goes. Clayton's pretty good if you want to try to dig through your deck. In the early game, you really want to use your Destiny Dealers to find your alter ego so that you can kind of like pitch them. But to be honest, sometimes keeping the 5k as it is in your hand is just way better. Or you can commit it as an 8k and start rushing decks like Chronojet, like Zorga, then it's pretty good as well. In the early game, if you're committing your Mekanis, you want to commit it on the grade 1 turn and then start bashing because it's a free soul charge 1. And then if you're versing Gandiva, you just slot it into soul and it never gets retired anyways. So maybe that's like one of the good merits in Mikani. So if you play more quantities of it, then you can start shoving it into soul in the early game before they get to grade 3, which essentially negates, I guess, the best harvest value, I guess, that your opponent might get out of it, essentially. Which means that you get 1 extra soul. Feels pretty good. So yeah, that's Mikani. But otherwise, this deck is pretty simple as you play it. The deck kind of plays itself. Generally, what you want to do is you want to keep Awakening on the side at the back row, and then you place, your Arresters in front of it, and then on the other side you have stuff like your Claim and your Sacrifice. Sacrifice behind the rearguard is really good because it auto locks itself, and then when it unlocks, it comes up as standing. So that means that, if you're attacking with Claim, Claim searches for another unit in that same column, and then you attack again, countercharge 1, and then pretty much you attack with your Vanguard. And then usually when you attack with your Vanguard, Sacrifice is boosting your Vanguard as well. So that means that when you use your Amnesty, your Exilix, then you refund the cost of that as well. So yeah, Sacrifice Messiah is usually on the behind the Vanguard and behind one of your rearguards that isn't on the side of the Awakening Messiah, and then you have the Arrestor in front of the Awakening Messiah and whatever other rearguard on the other side. Generally it's 2 rearguards first and then Vanguard, so that everything kind of self-locks. Your Vanguard will unlock, which when you unlock, it comes up as standing, so pretty much 4 attacks or whatever it is. So yeah, that's pretty much kind of how the deck goes. Now in terms of the metagame at the moment is Gandiva, and how to beat it is you keep your field all the same grade. And why is that important? Is because Gandiva retires 1 and then draws 1, right? which means that they have to force cards out of their hand to start multi-retiring, right? And if they're multi-retire, then, you know, they're committing one card to trade off for one card, and then they draw one, right? So it's a 1-for-1, which means that they're not actually getting advantage anyways. So as long as you're not giving them multi-retire all in one go, then it's good, right? Which means that, you know, they're committing one card to retire one card, they get one off best harvest, like whatever, right? So the trade-off is 1-for-1. So the moment that you put multiple grades, like 3, 2, and 1, then they drop the best harvest, and then multi-retire 3 with one Gandiva skill, that's when it gets problematic, right? Because they committed nothing, they get to draw 3, right? And that means that they retired 3, they bind 3, so the power spike is massive, yeah? And then once it gets to that point, then you're having to like replace cards on the field, and it makes it really, really hard for you to kind of cope against Gandiva. So pretty much keep your field, you know, equal grades, so as in like the same grades, so 2 across the board or 1 across the board, whatever, and try not to give, I guess, mass retire for their best harvest off the Gandiva skill. So like you can give, you know, their grade 2s, their grade 3s, like spot retire, that's fine. But, you know, when you're giving Gandiva, you know, multi-retires just off the Gandiva itself, that becomes problematic. The more cards you commit onto the field, then, you know, the harder Gandiva scales. So just be very, very careful of that. And Gandiva doesn't really use many boosters. So you just kind of want to retire or lock the front row, and then just get rid of it essentially. Which means, you know, they start committing, and as the game goes on, just draw a bunch and out power creep them essentially. So yeah, that's kind of like how Gandiva works. Play very minimal in the early game, no field, you know, and then once you get to your strides, then start to commit stuff onto your board. Stuff like Eva. Eva's pretty self-explanatory. Your deck just does what it does, and yeah, it locks, which means that it bypasses Obscure's retire, which is really good. So when you start locking, you pretty much take away 10k worth of shield, which is huge. But obviously, you know, you can't use Soul Free on it because Soul Free retires, which is a little bit annoying. But I mean, other than that, you know, you have a spot lock off the alter ego. Feels pretty good about that. And then, you know, just play it as the deck goes, scale, and then pretty much beat them down, right? Stuff into like Zorga Mask. Zorga Mask is pretty slow unless they get like, you know, double roaming Prison Dragon on grade 2, and then, you know, they call it out and start rushing you, then it becomes a little bit of a problem. But if in that case, you know, you start guarding early, and then as the game progresses, then your hand starts to, you know, come back, which is good. And also, if the roaming Prison Dragons are on the field, start locking them and then bind them away. That is one of the best things about Alter Ego, is that because the crest allows you to bind the units face up, one, it bypasses Gandiva's, you know, power spike, but as well, you know, you can get rid of like staple units like roaming Prison Dragon. There's like a few other, you know, cards that are really staple for some of these decks. You just get rid of them for the whole game, which is massive. Obscurate as well, just get rid of them. So yeah, that is, I guess, the Zorga Mask. Jujul's kind of the same, get rid of Impulses. Just go as, you know, just play the deck as it is. Into Chronojet. So Chronojet's a little bit weird, because, you know, it has kind of like protection on its own units because of the upstream returning to deck. Upstream is really the only card that is like super powerful, but otherwise, you know, treat this deck similar to Jet, where you have to play early, bash, play the grade 2 game, whoever strides first is much more advantageous. So that's pretty much how it works. And yeah, that's pretty much most of the main stuff. We don't have Willista yet, so I have yet to kind of test this into Willista. But I think this deck is really fun. If you can, you know, pick it up from your locals, highly recommend you do. Obviously support the locals, but also just picking up this deck is really, really fun. Straight out, you know, you're finding a rare in this, and you don't even need Makani. And if you want to swap out the Makani, you can even play like the prison. The prison, you know, you place in the Order Zone and Soul Charge 3, neg 1, but you get 1 extra soul than Makani, which is pretty cool. The only downside to that is that you don't have a unit body on the board, but I don't know how impactful that is in this current meta because you know, Gandiva is a thing. But yeah, you know, you're finding rares and pretty much you can just play it straight out, and this deck is actually really good. One of the better decks in the meta at the moment. So yeah, that's pretty much Messiah in a nutshell. Hope you guys enjoyed this comprehensive guide. Let me know in the comments how you like this format. The reason why I didn't do the normal way I've done it, I guess, in terms of like, you know, showing you the cards as it is because of accessibility to the deck, essentially. So yeah, my friend had it, but you know, didn't get the deck off him in time, so hence why this format is slightly different from normal. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you did, comment down below what you guys think of Messiah. Have you guys played it before? You know, pick it up. Definitely give me your thoughts on what the deck is and how you guys like it. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.